Reverend Margaret Flick, who's going to talk about walking the path with the great blue heron. Margaret has served as a minister to 2 congregations in Northern California and been a guest speaker at a number of churches after retiring from pulpit ministry. She also volunteered for Lake County Hospice for several years as a bereavement and group facilitator and counselor. And she continues to write articles for Unity and lives in California with her hubby Howie. And on a personal note, one of the most charming people who lives the principles more than people that I run into regularly. So I'm delighted to have her speak for us today. Margaret?
Margaret was our classmate too.
Pardon? Yes, classmate. And it's so good to see you both. I've missed you.
Likewise.
Anyway, I'm going to start today. I do have a PowerPoint, and I am going to start today with a poem by Mary Oliver. It's called A Poem of One World. This morning, the beautiful white heron was floating along above the water, and then into the sky of this one world we all belong to, where everything sooner or later is a part of everything else. Which thought made me feel, for a little while, quite beautiful myself. And I had an experience a couple weeks ago where I was walking in our beloved state park. It's not a manicured park, it's wild, lots of creatures, otters, herons, deer, all sorts of creatures. And it's my favorite place in Lake County where I live. And there's also an overflowing creek, especially with the rains. We had a lot of rain finally. The drought finally ended here. And so there's water everywhere. And there's this lush growth so that when you walk down the path, you're just kind of enfolded by green. It's just beautiful. And so as I was turning the corner one day on the path, up ahead of me, sharing the path, was a great blue heron. And it was just walking along just like I was. And, kind of a pace like this. And it has long, spindly legs, and it has this incredible body. You don't know how these little legs could hold this streamlined but large body and this incredible neck. And it wasn't frightened of me. It didn't run away or fly away. It just kept on. And then it looked around to see if there was anything to eat. And then with its massive wingspan, which is like 6 feet, it flew off with this squawk that sounded ancient, prehistoric. And it was one of those moments where to share a path with a creature like that, to not just observe it from afar, was just one of those sacred moments. It was so special and so beautiful. And it pretty much reinforced what I believe, which is that in our humanness, a lot of times we look for wisdom from each other, which of course we would. We speak the same language, and if we don't, we can get translations. But there are other teachers. There are other wisdom teachers that are ancient and far more experienced than we are. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And it is what I learned from the heron today, or that day, was patience. They are so patient. They will stand in the same spot for hours looking for food. They are elegant, they are graceful, and they have a self-possession that is amazing. And so when you look at them, you're just so in awe, and it's so rare and exciting to see them in flight. So today, that's what I am going to be talking about, that we walk the path with many creatures, the spiritual path, and they have a lot to teach us. So I am going to start my PowerPoint, and I'll share my screen. So that is the heron, and they are magnificent. And so we absorb the wisdom of nature. The First Nation peoples consider humans the younger siblings of older creation and believe they are our teachers. They don't judge other beings by human criteria. Our ancestors and indigenous cultures today knew that the wisdom of God was stored in many places: the trees, the clouds, the wind, the animals, the plants, and the people. They didn't feel separated from nature. They knew they were a part of it. They respected it, they honored it, and they learned from it. Thomas Aquinas said that revelation comes in 2 volumes, nature and the Bible. And in the olden times, Matthew Fox, in his book, Julian of Norwich, and also The Sacred Grove, writes that creation spirituality is a way of living within the community of earth that deepens our reverence for life, participates in the creativity of the cosmos, and develops our passion for justice and human transformation. Many mystics, such as Hildegard of Bingen, Julian of Norwich, Meister Eckhart, followed this path. And in Matthew's book, he talks about the shift from creation spirituality to the salvation model, which meant that afterlife was more important than the life on earth, that people were striving for what was going to come in heaven, whereas before they were very connected to the earth, and they celebrated it with festivals, the harvest, the planting, the in-between times. They were grateful and connected. But then the bubonic plague came along, and that altered people's view of their relationship with nature. They didn't have the science to explain germs and bacteria and viruses. So this once sacred being that they walked along with, this honored friend and nurturer, mother, was now an enemy. They felt that the earth and God were punishing them. So rather than honoring it, they chose to conquer it. And the Industrial Revolution put the final nails in the coffin of our relationship with nature. And what was once sacred was now a commodity. So many of us want to turn the tide to that. And I love this quote by Eckhart Tolle. We depend on nature not only for our physical survival, we also need nature to show us the way home, the way out of the prison of our own minds. We got lost in doing, thinking, remembering, anticipating, lost in a maze of complexity and a world of problems. So believing, as I do, that all beings are sacred and that we can learn from each and every one of them, I'd like to focus today on the wisdom of trees. Other than my kitty and a few other animals, I think that trees are my most treasured friends outside of humans. Trees are mentioned in the Bible at least 56 times. The tree of good of evil, the tree of life, and so on. And Jesus used nature in his parables, as did Buddha and Muhammad and just about every other spiritual master. In fact, he spent the last night of his life in an olive grove. So one of the things is Buddha as well talked about trees. In fact, he discovered his connection, his enlightenment in the forest. Tracy Cochran, in her article, A Night in the Forest, from Parabola magazine, writes, "In darkness in a forest, the Buddha discovered that there is no such thing as a truly separate self, that we are all inextricably interconnected with each other and the rest of life. How can he not have been influenced by his surroundings? Our science is slowly rediscovering what indigenous people have always known. Trees and other creatures are not individual beings, but part of an interconnected community, inextricably nourishing and communicating and supporting one another. In his choice of meditation retreat, the Buddha could not be truly alone. And upon his enlightenment, he gave up his old world." Tracy continues, "The world of creation welcomed his awakening with wild joy and celebration. And for 7 days, before he left the forest, the awakened one stood and gazed at the tree that sheltered and supported him, offering it the finest and only gift he had to give, the gift of his attention. From that day on, everything he said and did would express his awareness of connection. And he also said, the Buddha, the forest is a peculiar organism of unlimited kindness and benevolence that makes no demands for its sustenance and extends generously the products of its life activity. It affords protection to all beings, offering shade even to the axeman, the man who destroys it. So, what can we learn from the trees? If the trees could talk, and pretend they can talk right now, they would say, be a blessing. They would tell us that we are givers. We produce oxygen and know that human life could not exist without us. One of our elders produces as much oxygen as 10 humans inhale in a year. Our bodies absorb carbon dioxide and we minimize pollutants. We gather and store water and help keep the soil healthy and in place. We provide shelter for the birds, and thousands of species depend on us. Whatever you give us, we make it better. So, in a moment of reflection, we pray to be as giving as the trees. How can we make things better? How can we be a shelter for people who need our love and compassion? And other beings as well, beyond humans. How can we be that loving shelter? We pray to be like the trees, to be a blessing to all we meet. The other thing the trees would tell us is to have patience, along with the heron. We see so many creatures, including cats, have so much patience to go after what they need. So the trees tell us we grow slowly, very slowly. We're not in a hurry. We know that there will be hardships and sickness, growth, light, years of plenty. We build strong trunks and roots to help us weather whatever the universe provides. Some of us have been around for over 9,000 years. Many of our redwood sisters and brothers were born before the time of Jesus. Our clonal aspen friends in Utah are over 40,000 strong and over 80,000 years old. We know that rushing causes pain, so we have patience, and that has served us well. So we pray for mindfulness and patience, to not rush things, to await our spiritual guidance, and to know that it is always there if we ask for it. But to not rush, to be able to see and be and appreciate and express gratitude for wherever we are. The next lesson that the trees teach us is giving and receiving. We give back what we have received. From the dead tree trunk, even in death, I give as I have received. I have trapped nutrients from the ground and stored them. Now that I am a mere trunk, my children can thrive from my stores. Over 6,000 species depend on my body to thrive. I give as I have been given. And so, especially for those of us who are advanced in years, what legacy do we leave? When I think about it, when I'm gone, what will people remember? Will they remember my kind words, my compassion, or will they remember something less pleasant? So it's a really wonderful way to think about things. What legacy am I leaving? What is going to comfort people after I'm gone? Will I have made a difference? Will I have been of service? The next one is loving your neighbor. We communicate, we feed each other, we help our family when they're sick or weak. We don't crowd them. We help our family members who live alongside of us with food when they are sick or weak. And their trees are all connected through a fungal network, and all these electrical impulses are going back and forth. It's an amazing, amazing process. And we do not keep the light from our friends and family. If you notice trees of a species, do not touch at the canopy because they allow each other to grow and to spread. We do not keep the light from our friends and family. We know they need the light as much as we do. We warn others of danger by releasing chemicals to the wind so they can protect themselves. And during a storm, if we are a healthy, natural forest, we can help each other survive. We move and sway at different speeds so that we gently impact and slow each other down in a strong wind. We are healthy if our forest is diverse because no species can dominate. We don't allow more, taking more than we need, or we die. And this is from Dr. Suzanne Simard, who's the professor of forest ecology at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. I was staggered to discover that Douglas firs were receiving more photosynthetic carbon from paper birches than they were transmitting, especially when the firs were in the shade of their leafy neighbors. This helped explain the synergy of the pair's relationship. The birches, it turns out, were spurring the growth of the firs, like carers in human social networks. Looking further, we discovered that the exchange between the two tree species was dynamic. Each took different turns as mother, depending on the season, and so they forged their duality into a oneness, making a forest. And so especially now in this time of climate change, and especially where I live, forest fires, about 70% of Lake County has been burned, and we have millions of acres of forest. To take only what we need, to be mindful of how we use the products, not what we want, but what do we need, to be careful about what we consume, and to honor how we're different. Especially this is Pride Month, to honor how we're different and to learn from each other and to honor the differences, because nature is so diverse. It loves diversity, and I think that's something we can adopt. And the next one is to release. Love and let go of what keeps you from thriving and growing. So the trees say we release our leaves every year so that we can rest and grow healthy in the spring. We're not afraid to let go, because it takes more energy to hold on than it does to produce new leaves. So we absorb the supplies in our leaves and let go the substances that no longer serve us. Our leaves will be healthier and able to transform light into food. Once we drop all our leaves, we can rest and restore ourselves before the spring. So again, we pray to release whatever does not serve us. Maybe it is unhelpful thought patterns. Maybe it is holding on to beliefs that produce angst or discomfort in us, and maybe even cause us to act in ways that we do not want to, that do not serve our highest good or the highest good of this planet, and keep us from growing in wisdom and light. So we pray for that. And we hold that we can and will be guided. And the next one, let your strength come from who you are. The trees say we are at peace with who we are. We do not feel badly if we are crooked or thin or thick. Our strength comes from our roots deep in the earth and our relationship to each other. We are perfect as we are. So we learn self-acceptance, to know that each of us is a beautiful expression of the Christ presence, that we are all valuable just the way we are, and to let go of criticism and anything that we cannot accept about ourselves. There are things we want to change, there are things we're not proud of, but to know that we are worthy and we love ourselves so that we can love others. And this is a wonderful lesson that the trees give us. And also the next one is to allow yourself to be connected. Alan Watts wrote, if you go off into the forest and get very quiet, you'll come to understand that you are connected with everything. And the trees say that we are connected by roots, a vast fungal network and electrical impulses. We know that everything is connected and works together for good. Although some of us stand alone, we are stronger together. And if you have ever had the privilege of being in a redwood forest, you can feel the energy. You can feel the sacredness of these trees. I have personally felt like I was enveloped in love, and it is such a healing presence to be around them. They are so magnificent and so ancient, and they are the tallest beings on the planet. Wallen Ben, who wrote the book, The Hidden Life of Trees, where I got a lot of this information, says, I, for one, welcome breaking down the moral barriers between animals and plants. When the capabilities of vegetative beings become known and their emotional lives and needs are recognized, then the way we treat plants will gradually change as well. Forests are not first and foremost lumber factories and warehouses for raw material, and only secondary complex habitats for thousands of species, which is the way modern forestry currently treats them. Completely the opposite, in fact. In fact, in Japan, a marine chemist discovered that the leaves falling into streams and rivers leach acids into the ocean that help build plankton. And that's what fish survive on. So more fish because of trees. So we let go of our human ego that although we are the most powerful beings on earth that we think we are, quite frankly, and maybe we are not, but to let go of our need to dominate and to just allow others to be, and to be appreciative and grateful for all that is around us. And so we take that into a meditation, to the peace of being, to the peace of being in the trees, to remember what it's like to be in a forest, and to allow ourselves to just be. So we take 3 deep centering breaths. And so we bring to mind, where is our sacred place in nature? Who is our teacher? Is it the water? Is it the trees? Is it the animals that we live with? Or the deer that come into our yards? Is it the birds of the air? Who can we see the sacred in? And for a few moments, reflect on that in the quiet. Trees are sanctuaries. Whoever knows how to speak to them, whoever knows how to listen to them, can learn the truth. They do not preach learning and precepts. They preach, undeterred by particulars, the ancient law of life. And when you are ready to open your eyes and come back to this sanctuary, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to befriend a tree, but if you are not afraid of looking crazy, then to go into the forest and to ask permission to touch a tree, to touch its bark. And one of these days, one of them will say yes. And I have befriended a tree in the park that I spoke of, and we have an energy exchange, and it is an amazing feeling. I feel her love and she feels mine, and it is incredible. So I encourage you to not worry about looking foolish, but to befriend a tree. And so in closing, I'd like to leave with this quote by Buddha. When your mind is filled with love, send it in one direction, and then a second, a third, and a fourth, then above and then below. Identify with everything without hatred, resentment, anger, or enmity. This mind of love is very wide. It grows immeasurably and eventually is able to embrace the whole world. And so we pray to embrace this whole world, this poor planet, this Mother Earth, which has nurtured us, which we cannot live without. We pray to be mindful of how we walk on her and how we are able to hopefully mitigate the damage that we have done. And so we hold all beings, especially ourselves, in this mind of love. Thank you.